The hinges of the sheriff's office door creaked like tired bones when the stranger stepped inside. Dust from the street followed him, swirling in thin shafts of sunlight that slanted through the blinds. He paused by the threshold, letting his eyes adjust to the gloom. Outside, the desert wind howled, pushing against the old boards of Stillwater Town. But inside it was quiet. Quiet in that uneasy way that comes before words change the course of men's lives. Sheriff Amos Clay sat behind his desk, had tilted low, a pipe smoldering between his fingers. The faint scent of tobacco mingled with the dry tang of old wood and gun oil. His desk was cluttered with papers, a half-empty glass of whiskey, and a single brass star lying face down. When he heard the door, he didn't look up right away. He just spoke, his voice rough as gravel. "Office is closed unless you got business that can't wait till sunup." The stranger took another step forward. "Reckon it can't wait," he said softly. Something in that voice made the sheriff raise his head. A flicker of recognition crossed his eyes. Though the years had done their work, the man standing before him was no longer the boy who'd ridden out of town a decade ago. "Jack Hanlon," Amos said, leaning back slowly. "Well, I'll be damned." Jack's hand brushed the brim of his hat. "Been a while, Sheriff. 10 years, give or take." Amos's tone was calm, but his jaw tightened. "Last I heard, you lit out after your brother's funeral. Said you weren't coming back." Jack's eyes drifted toward the window. "I meant it. But some ghosts don't stay buried." The sheriff set the pipe aside and folded his hands. "You're talking about Owen Lark." "That's right," Jack replied. "He's here, ain't he?" The air between them thickened. Outside, a horse snorted somewhere near the hitching post. Amos sighed, took off his hat and rubbed the lines from his brow. "Lark's been in Stillwater near 6 months now. Runs cattle south of the ridge. Keeps to himself, mostly. Folks say he's turned straight." Jack stepped closer to the desk. "He killed my brother, Amos." The sheriff's eyes lifted, steady, sad. "And the law cleared him, Jack. Wasn't enough proof." "You know that?" Jack's jaw tightened, the scar under his eye catching the sunlight. "The law didn't see what I saw." For a long moment, neither man spoke. The clock on the wall ticked unevenly, like it, too, was holding its breath. Amos finally rose, his boots scuffing the floorboards. He was older now, the fire of his youth dimmed but not gone. "I don't want trouble in my town," he said quietly. "You already got it," Jack answered. "Just didn't open your eyes to see it." Amos studied him, measuring the man he'd once mentored. He'd taught Jack how to shoot, how to ride, how to keep his temper in a world that tested a man's soul every day. And now, looking into Jack's hardened eyes, he saw what 10 years of grief and exile could do. "Listen to me, son," Amos said finally, softer now. "You bring your vengeance here, it'll poison you faster than whiskey ever could." Jack's lips twitched into a grim smile. "Maybe I've already been drinking from that bottle a long time." He turned to leave, but Amos's voice stopped him. "There's something else you should know. Lark ain't alone no more. He's got folks depending on him, a wife, little girl too. Maybe things ain't as simple as they used to be." Jack froze in the doorway, his silhouette caught in the gold light of the afternoon. "Simple died the day my brother did," he said, and stepped back into the sun. That night the town lay quiet under a purple sky. A lantern swung from the sheriff's porch, its flame casting slow-moving shadows. Inside, Amos poured himself another drink, though it tasted more of guilt than whiskey. He opened a drawer and took out a faded photograph. 3 young men standing shoulder to shoulder by the riverbank. Himself, Jack, and another boy with a wild grin. Billy Hanlon. He stared at it for a long while before sliding it back and whispering, "Lord help us all." Meanwhile, Jack rode out to the edge of town, to the place where the plains opened wide like a sea of rust and gold. His horse shifted beneath him, restless in the cooling air. Down in the valley, he could see the faint glow of lanterns from Lark's ranch. The sight made his stomach knot. He remembered the night it had happened. The gunfire, the shouting, his brother falling into the dirt. He remembered Lark's eyes, steady and cold. The law had said it was self-defense. Jack never believed it. He dismounted and stood for a while, his hat in his hands, feeling the wind tug at his coat. "I ain't here to cause blood," he murmured to the dark. "Just to find the truth." But the truth, he knew, had a habit of drawing blood anyway. Back in town, the sheriff's deputy, a young man named Clay Porter, found Amos still awake. "Was that who I think it was, Sheriff?" Clay asked. Yeah, Amos muttered, not looking up. Jack Hanlon's come home. What's he want? Amos's gaze drifted toward the window, where the last smoke of the stranger's boots still seemed to hang in the air. What every lost man wants, he said quietly. A reason to stop running, and someone to blame. When dawn broke, Stillwater was already humming. The blacksmith's hammer rang, the saloon's doors flapped open, and the morning sun poured through the cracks of every weathered wall. Sheriff Amos Clay stood on the porch of his office, pipe in hand, watching dust swirl across Main Street. In that dust somewhere rode a man chasing the ghost of his past. And Amos knew, before this was over, one of them would not be coming. The sun was climbing slow over Stillwater when Jack rode out toward the southern ridge. The land rolled wide and endless before him, brown hills scarred by the years, mesquite trees reaching like twisted fingers toward the sky. Every hoofbeat sounded louder than it should have, echoing in the emptiness. He hadn't been this way since before Billy died. The air still carried the smell of dust and cedar, same as it had that day. By noon, he saw the Lark Ranch up ahead, a low house of sun-worn wood, smoke curling from the chimney, the sound of a child laughing faintly on the wind. That laugh hit him like a bullet he didn't expect. He slowed his horse, staring from a distance. There was a woman on the porch hanging a blanket to dry. Her hair gleamed copper in the light, and beside her a little girl sat carving a stick into shapes only children understand. For a long moment, Jack just watched. He didn't see Owen yet, but he felt him, the way a storm feels close before you hear thunder. When he finally rode closer, the woman straightened. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not unkind but cautious. "Can I help you, stranger?" she called out. Jack tipped his hat. "I'm looking for Owen Lark." "He's out back fixing the corral," she said, studying him. "You a friend?" Jack hesitated. "Used to be." She nodded slowly, unsure what that meant. "Name's Mara, I'll fetch him." Jack dismounted, brushing the trail dust from his coat, his eyes drawn to the faint scuff marks on the porch. Small boots, a child's play. Life here was simple, ordinary. A man could lose himself in this kind of peace. But Jack wasn't here to find peace. Moments later, Owen Lark appeared from behind the barn, hammer in hand, wiping sweat from his brow. His beard was thicker now, hair streaked with gray, but his build was the same. Solid, weathered, the kind of man who'd fought for every inch of ground he stood on. When he saw Jack, the hammer stopped mid-swing. "Well," Owen said slowly, "that's a ghost I didn't reckon to see." Jack's jaw tightened. Some ghosts don't take the hint. The two men stood staring at each other, the years stretching taut between them. Mara watched from the doorway, sensing the storm in their silence. Owen finally set the hammer down and walked forward. "You ridin' under law or under grudge?" Jack's eyes flicked to the badge-shaped outline sunburned onto Owen's vest, an old shadow of a man who'd once been a deputy himself. "I don't carry a badge anymore," Jack said. "And I don't take kindly to murderers wearing halos." Mara gasped softly, stepping forward, but Owen raised a hand. His face hardened, though there was a flicker of pain beneath it. "You come here to talk about Billy?" "I came for the truth." Owen's eyes darkened. "You already decided what that truth is." Jack's voice dropped low. "Then change my mind." A tense silence fell. The wind rattled the tin roof, a lonely sound against the open land. Owen motioned toward the barn. "Not in front of my family." They walked inside, out of the sunlight. Dust motes floated through the slats and the smell of hay filled the space. Jack stopped near the stall, his hand resting on the beam where, years ago, they used to carve their initials after long rides together. The marks were still there, JH plus OL plus BH, a ghost of brotherhood etched in wood. Owen followed his gaze. "You remember that night wrong, Jack." "Do I?" Jack turned. "He was my brother. And he was my friend," Owen snapped. "But he drew first. You weren't there when it started. He was drunk, angry, looking to prove something. He came at me with a knife. What was I supposed to do?" Jack's fists clenched. "Don't tell me you had no choice. There's always a choice." Owen stepped closer, their faces inches apart. "You think I wanted that blood on my hands? I've lived with it every damn day." For the first time, Jack saw it, the tremor in Owen's jaw, the weight behind his words. Doubt slipped into his anger, small but sharp. "You could have told me," Jack said finally, voice shaking. "Instead, you let me ride off thinking you got away with murder." Owen sighed heavily. "You wouldn't have listened. You needed someone to hate." Jack didn't answer. His heart thundered in his chest. Every word Owen said tangled with the memory of Billy's lifeless eyes. But there was something else too, something hollow, like a truth half buried. When Jack finally turned to leave, Owen called after him. "There's more to that night than you know. The law never heard the whole story." Jack stopped. "Then tell it." Owen hesitated, glancing toward the open barn door where sunlight spilled across the dirt. "Not here. Not now. Some things, they're better dug up slow. Sheriff Clay knows more than he let on." Jack froze. "Amos?" Owen nodded once. "Ask him." That night, Sheriff Amos Clay couldn't sleep. He sat by the window of his office, pipe cold, papers scattered like leaves. When he heard the knock, he already knew who it was. "Come in, Jack," he said quietly. Jack stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His face was shadowed, his eyes fierce but wounded. "You told me Lark turned straight," he said. "You didn't tell me you were part of it." Amos leaned back, the floor creaking beneath his boots. "I told you what I could." Jack slammed a hand on the desk. "You owe me the truth." The sheriff looked at him for a long moment, then sighed, picking up the brass star that had been lying face down. He turned it over slowly. "Billy wasn't supposed to die that night. It was a setup, a cattle deal gone bad. Lark tried to stop it. But when your brother pulled that blade, things turned quick. The jury cleared Lark because I testified he fired in defense." Jack's voice dropped to a whisper. "You lied. I told the law what would keep this town from burning to the ground," Amos said quietly, "and I've carried that lie ever since." Jack's world tilted. Every piece of his anger suddenly felt small against the weight of that truth. "You let me hate him," Jack said hoarsely. "You let me rot out there thinking I was right." Amos's voice cracked. "Because you needed to live, son. Vengeance was all you had left. If I took that away too, you wouldn't have come back at all." Jack stepped back, the room spinning. "You think this makes it better?" "No," Amos said. "It makes it heavier." The silence that followed felt like a wound neither man could heal. Finally, Jack turned toward the door. "This ain't over," he said quietly. "If the truth's buried, I'll dig till my hands bleed." When he left, Amos stared after him. The smoke of old sins thick in the air. Outside, the wind was picking up again, whispering through the empty streets. The desert never forgot what men tried to hide. And somewhere out past the ridge, Owen Lark stood by his porch, holding his little girl close, watching the horizon as if he could. The next morning came red and silent, the kind of dawn that made the horizon look like it was bleeding. Stillwater woke slow, its streets empty except for a few horses tied along the hitching posts and the creak of a shutter swinging in the wind. Sheriff Amos Clay sat alone in his office, hat in his hands, staring at the badge lying on the desk. The metal had dulled with time, edges worn smooth from years of being touched and regretted. He thought of Jack. He thought of Billy. And he thought of that night long ago, the one that had never stopped echoing. When the door opened, he didn't flinch. Jack stepped in, the dust of the trail still on his boots, eyes rimmed with sleepless anger. "I went back to the ridge," he said quietly. "To where it happened." Amos nodded, not looking up. "And? Found 2 sets of shells." "Not one." Jack dropped a handful of tarnished brass casings on the desk. "You told me Billy drew first. But these say different." Amos finally raised his gaze. "I buried those rounds myself." Jack's jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because truth cuts both ways," Amos said. "If the law had seen those, Owen would have swung. And Billy—" He stopped, voice breaking slightly. "Billy's hand was on the knife, Jack. That part was real. But he wasn't sober, and someone put him there." Jack's voice dropped to a whisper. "Who?" Amos stood, pacing slowly toward the window. "A drifter named Cal Roper. Worked for Lark at the time. Thought he could settle an old debt by stirring trouble between your brother and Owen. He vanished right after that night. Never seen again. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. So Lark didn't kill Billy for hate? Amos shook his head. He tried to stop him. He shot when Billy came at him, but the second shot, that was Roper's. He missed the first man and hit your brother clean through. I found that out later, when it was too late to tell the law. The town needed peace, and I gave it to them by burying the truth. Jack stared at the old sheriff, the world shifting beneath his feet. All the years he'd carried that fire inside him, all the bitterness, the rage, now twisted into something hollow. You should have told me. Amos met his eyes. Would you have listened? Or would you have shot Owen Lark on sight? Jack said nothing. The silence was answer enough. That evening he rode back to the ridge. The wind had picked up, carrying sand and heat. In the distance he saw the Lark Ranch again. Warm light spilling from its windows, a faint melody of a woman humming. It didn't look like a murderer's home. It looked like a man trying to build something from the ashes of his past. Owen was outside by the fence, tightening a rope when Jack rode up. He didn't reach for his gun this time. He just watched, steady as the earth. Sheriff tell you? He asked quietly. Jack nodded. Most of it. Owen sighed, leaning on the post. Didn't think he would. Why didn't you? Jack asked. Because it wouldn't bring Billy back. And it sure wouldn't bring me peace. You'd already lost one brother. I didn't want to be the reason you lost yourself, too. The words hit Jack like a hard wind. He dismounted, walking closer. You been carrying that all this time? Owen nodded. Every sunrise, every night. You think I sleep easy? I see him every time I close my eyes, Jack swallowed. For the first time since coming home, he saw not an enemy, but a man as broken as he was. Cal Roper, he said. You know where he went? Owen's eyes darkened. I got word last month. He's been sighted up north near Dry Creek. Jack's fingers curled at his sides. Then that's where I'm going. Don't, Owen said quickly. That road only ends one way. Jack looked out toward the horizon, where the wind turned the desert into a sea of shifting gold. Then I'll meet it. 2 days later, the sheriff found Jack saddled up outside the livery. His horse was restless, the air heavy with coming storm. Amos stood in the doorway, pipe cold, watching him tighten the reins. You think killing Roper will fix what's broke? Amos asked. Jack didn't look up. No, but maybe it'll let Billy rest. Amos sighed. You got 2 choices, son. You ride out there and become the man you swore you'd never be. Or you stay and let the law finish what it started. Jack swung into the saddle, his expression carved from stone. The law had its chance 10 years ago. Amos's voice rose. And what did vengeance ever give you but scars? Jack paused, eyes softening. A reason to keep breathing. Then he rode out, dust trailing behind like smoke from an old fire. The road to Dry Creek was long and mean. Wind scoured the canyons, carrying echoes of lost things. Jack rode through it all, his mind a storm of memory and resolve. By dusk, he reached the old mining camp where the rumor said Roper had been seen. A broken saloon leaned half into the sand, its sign hanging by one nail. Inside, shadows moved. Jack stepped in slow. The air smelled of whiskey and sweat. A man sat at the bar, hunched, coat ragged, revolver at his side. When he turned, Jack saw the same snake-like eyes he'd seen once at Billy's funeral, the kind that never belonged to honest men. Hanlon, the man drawled. Heard you was dead. Not yet, Jack said. But I heard you put my brother there. Roper grinned, gold tooth flashing. That drunk fool? He brought his own death. Jack's gun was drawn before the words finished. Roper's hand twitched toward his holster, but the years had slowed him. The gunfire cracked through the emptiness, a single echo rolling out across the desert. When the smoke cleared, Roper lay slumped against the wall, eyes glassy, a thin line of blood trailing down his chin. Jack stood there a long moment, breathing hard. He'd imagined this moment for years, the taste of justice, the satisfaction of revenge. But now it just felt empty, like sand slipping through his fingers. He holstered his gun and walked out into the night. The wind caught his coat, carrying away the last of the smoke. Above, the stars shone cold and far, the same stars that had watched his brother die, the same that now watched him trying to find forgiveness. When he returned to Stillwater, days later, the sheriff was waiting. Amos didn't ask what had happened. He didn't have to. The look in Jack's eyes told him everything. You do it? Amos asked quietly. Jack nodded once. It's done, the sheriff sighed. Then what now? Jack looked toward the horizon, where the sun was setting behind the hills, painting the town in gold and blood. Now I try to live like Billy wanted me to. Maybe that's how I pay the debt. He handed Amos the gun belt, the same one he'd worn since he was 17. Don't reckon I'll be needing this anymore. Amos took it, eyes misting. You sure? Jack smiled faintly. For the first time in years. That evening, as dusk fell over Stillwater, Jack rode out one last time. Not to chase ghosts, not to hunt men, just to breathe. The wind was warm, the sky bruised purple, and the world felt wide again. He turned his horse toward the open land beyond the ridge, where the past was buried deep under layers of dust and silence. Behind him, the sheriff watched from the porch, the badge glinting faintly in his hand. He whispered to no one, "Ride easy, son." And somewhere on the horizon, as night took the desert in its arms, the lawman's shadow finally faded, leaving behind only the sound of hooves, the whisper of forgiveness and the peace that comes when a man has finally faced the truth. Peace that comes when a man has finally faced the truth, and as if he could already feel the storm coming for them all. One of them would not be coming back.